In the fading light of an autumn afternoon, a gaunt, starving bear roamed a vast, shadowed forest. Its once thick coat was now matted and patchy from months of hunger, and every step it took stirred memories of a better past when the land teemed with life. The bear's eyes, deep and resolute, shone with a fierce determination born from despair, a silent vow to survive despite the odds. For many long, bitter months, nature had withheld her bounty. The harsh winter had left the woodlands barren, and even as spring had timidly begun to stir, human interference had complicated the bear's quest for nourishment. It was into this unforgiving world that the bear, driven by an insatiable hunger and tempered by an uncanny cleverness, set out to find food, unaware that fate was about to test not only its strength but also its wits. Every muscle in the bear's powerful frame ached from the relentless search for sustenance. Its stomach growled with an intensity that was both physical and spiritual, a constant reminder of what had been lost and what still might be gained. The forest, a tangle of towering pines and scattered deciduous groves, held hidden dangers as well as scarce rewards. Among the gnarled roots and beneath the frost-hardened earth, human hunters had left behind snares and traps, cunning contraptions designed to capture unsuspecting prey. The bear had encountered these devices before, and now, in its desperate state, the stakes were higher than ever. Starvation and capture both meant certain death, and the bear's survival depended on its ability to outthink those who would use traps to seize it like a trophy. On one frigid morning, as the weak sun struggled to pierce through a slate-gray sky, the bear ambled cautiously along a narrow woodland path. Its nostrils flared, detecting the faint, acrid scent of metal and rubber, a human-made trap lying hidden among a bed of dead leaves. Memories of past encounters, when other creatures had fallen victim to these devices, surged in its mind. In that moment, the bear's eyes narrowed with an inner fire. Though hunger gnawed relentlessly at its belly, it refused to succumb to the fate that so many before had met. Instead, the bear began to observe the trap from a safe distance, its mind working methodically to understand its construction and mechanism, drawing on a lifetime of instincts honed on the wild edges of nature. The bear circled the contraption with deliberate caution. The forest around it was silent except for the whisper of a chilly wind, and every crunch of fallen needles under its massive paws resonated like a drumbeat. The trap, a crude yet deadly assembly of wire, bait, and a pressure plate, was designed for animals smaller than a fully grown bear. And yet, in its hunger, the bear could have easily been tempted to investigate. Instead, it chose a different path, one of cunning avoidance. With a series of subtle, almost imperceptible movements, the bear led itself away from the snare while simultaneously making mental notes of the trap's location. Its mind, alert and calculating despite the weariness in its limbs, began to fashion a strategy not just to avoid capture, but to turn the hunter's own devices against them. Over the following days, as the hunger deepened and desperation edged closer to despair, the bear's journey took it along meandering trails and hidden clearings where the signs of human presence were unmistakable. Old footprints in the mud, discarded remnants of bait, and even the faint scent of smoke from distant campfires wove a tapestry of danger that the bear learned to read like an open book. In each encounter with a trap or a sign of hunter's activities, the bear paused to study its environment. It learned the patterns, the moments when the hunters were likely to return, the type of bait they used, and the exact spots where the traps were laid out with mechanical precision. One chilly evening, beneath a canopy of starlight that barely penetrated the drifting mist, the bear found itself at the edge of a clearing. Here, amid the remnants of a long-forgotten campsite, it discovered a cluster of traps left abandoned. Instead of retreating in fear, the bear's hunger and cunning converged. With a careful, almost surgical precision, it began to manipulate the traps. Using its massive, yet dexterous paws and a keen sense of pressure, the bear disassembled a portion of one trap and dragged it into a shallow depression in the earth. There, in a moment that seemed to defy both nature and the intentions of its human adversaries, the bear arranged the remnants of the snare as a decoy. It laid down a few morsels of food it had scavenged, a meager offering compared to the feast it so desperately craved, in a spot where the trap's mechanism would be triggered if an unwary hunter approached. The bear's plan was audacious. By rigging the trap in reverse, it hoped to lure the hunters into a false sense of security, perhaps even setting the stage for an encounter in which its own escape would serve as a lesson. The night deepened, and the forest seemed to hold its breath. Somewhere in the distance, a faint echo of human voices, a laugh, a murmur, hinted that the hunters were indeed prowling the area. Yet, when they approached the clearing, they found only the eerie silence of an empty campsite and the unmistakable footprints of a bear that had passed by long before. Frustrated and bewildered, the hunters were forced to reconsider their tactics. Meanwhile, hidden behind a copse of dense trees, the bear watched silently, its heart pounding with a mixture of triumph and cautious relief. It had outsmarted them this time, but the struggle was far from over. As the days turned into weeks, the bear's journey continued, a relentless odyssey of hunger, wits, and survival. It moved from one part of the forest to another, always mindful of the traps and the hunters who set them. The seasons began to shift. The crisp edges of autumn softened into the muted grays of winter. Snow fell lightly at first, then in earnest, blanketing the forest in a cold, unyielding silence. The bear, now leaner but more resolute than ever, learned to adapt its methods. It sought shelter in the hollows of ancient trees and the hidden alcoves of rocky outcroppings, always avoiding open clearings where hunters might spot it. In one particularly dramatic encounter, as a bitter wind swept through a snow-laden glade, the bear found itself cornered near a frozen river. Hunters, emboldened by recent successes and driven by greed, had closed in from both sides. The tension in the air was palpable, a dangerous standoff between man and beast, with the river's icy current roaring nearby and the snow muffling every sound. The bear's survival depended on one final act of ingenuity. Summoning every last reserve of strength and cunning, it feinted to one side, drawing the hunter's attention with a series of calculated, lumbering steps. Then, with a burst of unexpected speed that belied its emaciated frame, the bear darted into a narrow crevice along the riverbank, an escape route so improbable that the hunters, momentarily stunned by its audacity, could only watch as their quarry vanished into the labyrinth of frozen fissures. Their shouts echoed in the cold air, but the bear was already long gone, its survival etched into the very stone and ice of the river's edge. For the bear, every day was a battle, a duel with hunger, with man's machinations, and with the unforgiving forces of nature. Yet each narrow escape, each moment of triumph, added another chapter to its extraordinary saga of survival. Its journey was not merely one of evasion but of transformation. From a desperate, starving animal on the brink of collapse to a cunning, battle-hardened survivor who had learned to outthink those who sought to capture it. The scars on its battered hide were medals of honor, and its weary eyes, though haunted by the hardships of the past, glowed with an inner fire that no trap or hunter could extinguish. In the long, lonely nights of winter, when the forest was cloaked in a hushed, crystalline stillness, the bear would often pause beneath a skeletal tree and listen to the distant echoes of human voices carried on the wind. It knew that the hunters were persistent, that their traps were laid with both care and cruelty. And yet, time and again, the bear's ingenuity and raw will had turned the tide. Every trap it evaded, every misdirected step that lured the hunters into a dead end, was a testament to the unyielding spirit of life that burned even in the most desperate of circumstances. As the seasons turned and the snow began to melt into streams that gushed through the awakening forest, the bear continued its solitary pilgrimage. It crossed sun-dappled meadows and trudged through murky wetlands, its journey punctuated by moments of both quiet introspection and adrenaline-fueled escape. The memory of that fateful encounter by the frozen river, when it had outsmarted a determined band of hunters, remained etched in every cautious step it took. It was a constant reminder that survival in this wild realm was a matter of both strength and strategy, a lesson that the bear had learned the hard way. In the fullness of time, As the forest slowly bloomed again with the vibrant promise of spring, the starving bear found not only nourishment but also a renewed sense of purpose. Its once gaunt form began to fill out as it feasted on the bounty of the reborn land, berries, fresh shoots, and the occasional unwary prey that crossed its path. Yet it never forgot the lessons of those lean, perilous days. The cunning that had enabled it to outwit human traps and evade capture was now a permanent part of its nature, a hard-won wisdom that would serve it well in the trials yet to come. Every night, beneath a vast sky filled with stars that the bear could only feel rather than see, it would settle in a quiet glen or a hidden nook, the echoes of distant human voices a distant, almost abstract threat. And as it slept, its dreams were filled with both the terror of hunger and the triumph of survival, a duality that defined its existence in the untamed wild. Thus the tale of the starving bear, how it outsmarted hunters and escaped capture, unfolded as an epic saga of endurance and ingenuity. Its journey, marked by narrow escapes and daring stratagems, was a living testament to the fierce, unquenchable spirit of nature. Though the scars of past encounters marred its body, they were also emblems of a hard-fought victory over a world determined to break it. And so, with each new day, the bear continued on its solitary path, a master of survival in a realm where only the clever and the courageous could prevail. In the wake of that fateful night by the frozen river, the bear's pulse still thundered with a mixture of relief and relentless caution. With each measured step through a world carved in ice and shadow, it resolved never to let desperation drive it into another trap. The bitter winter had yet to relent, and the forest, an endless expanse of frost-bound trees and shifting snowbanks, seemed to whisper both promise and peril in the silent language of nature. Over the following days, the bear wandered deeper into the wild, moving with a deliberate stealth that belied the raw hunger gnawing at its gaunt frame. The towering pines and tangled underbrush provided ample cover, and every rustle of wind in the needles or crunch of snow beneath massive paws was a reminder that survival depended as much on cunning as on strength. The memory of the hunter's crude traps was never far from its mind. It recalled every subtle clue, a hint of metal, a stray piece of bait, the lingering scent of human sweat that testified to the lethal devices scattered throughout these woods. With each encounter, the bear's instinct sharpened, its mind continuously recording the lessons of evasion. One frosty morning, as the weak sunlight struggled through a slate-gray sky, the bear discovered an abandoned hunter's camp hidden beneath a dense canopy of spruce. Scattered about were the remnants of human presence, a rusted canister half buried in snow, a small bundle of discarded bait, and a tattered map, its edges crumbling with age. The bear paused before these artifacts of intrusion. It sniffed the air around the camp, absorbing the strange, acrid scents that still clung to the objects. In a silent act of defiance, it pressed its snout against the map, leaving behind a personal signature of muddy fur and warm musk, a message that, in the secret language of the wild, said simply, "I was here." Though the bear could not decipher human words, it seemed to understand that the hunter's overconfidence was their greatest weakness. Night fell with an almost palpable stillness, the forest blanketed in a cold silence that accentuated every distant human murmur carried on the wind. The bear sought refuge in a shallow cave formed by a natural overhang of ice and rock. Within that quiet darkness, it allowed its thoughts to drift back over the hard-won days of evasion. Each near miss and every clever ruse became a quiet hymn of survival, a testament to how, even when hunger threatened to overwhelm it, the bear's wit had been its salvation. In the gentle hum of the cave, the beast listened to its own heartbeat and the soft drip of melting snow, finding solace in these small rhythms that defined life on the edge. At dawn, emerging into a world still shrouded in frost and dim light, the bear resumed its journey with a renewed sense of purpose. The forest had shifted subtly overnight. The air was filled with the clean scent of pine and the distant murmur of a thawing stream, guided by an acute sense of smell and the memory of dangerous clearings. It moved away from open spaces and toward the dense thicket of old-growth trees. Every step was calculated, each footprint deliberately obscured by backtracking and careful detours to confound any pursuers who might be tracking its scent. One day, driven by a desperate need for food, the bear followed a faint but unmistakable trail. The scent of wounded prey mingled with the crisp odor of snow. This trail led it across a frozen river, where the ice groaned and cracked under its weight. With every cautious step, the bear gauged the fragile surface, its reflections broken and distorted in the shifting ice, a symbol of its own precarious existence. On the far bank, the trail grew stronger. Amid a quiet clearing dappled with the pale light of winter, the bear finally discovered the source, an injured deer, limping and weak from the harshness of the season. The encounter was raw and brief. Instinct and hunger surged as the bear pounced with a sudden burst of ferocity, subduing the creature in a struggle as ancient as the wilderness itself. Though the deer's final fight was spirited, the bear's determination, honed over countless days of near starvation, soon prevailed. As it feasted, the bear's mind remained alert. Each morsel consumed was balanced by the awareness that such vulnerability in an open clearing could attract the hunters who lurked ever nearby. After the meal, the bear left the remains scattered like fleeting whispers on the snow, and with deliberate care, retraced its tracks back into the protective cover of the dense forest. For weeks thereafter, the bear continued to navigate the labyrinth of frost and needle, each day a duel between the primal forces of nature and the relentless designs of human ingenuity. It learned to recognize the telltale disturbances in the undergrowth that signaled freshly sprung traps, and it began to alter its own course to leave false trails, a series of muddy prints and deliberately scuffed patches of snow that would confound any unwelcome follower. Its mind, forged in hardship, embraced a quiet, calculating patience. Every moment was a lesson in misdirection, the art of disappearing when danger was near, of vanishing into the quiet gloom of a forest where only the rustle of leaves and the whisper of the wind dared speak. One particularly frigid night, beneath a waning moon that cast a pale glow over the snow, the bear found itself near a narrow valley cradled between steep, rocky outcrops. It sensed, with a deep, primal awareness, that human footsteps, deliberate, measured, and accompanied by murmured voices, echoed through the valley. The bear froze, its heart pounding like distant drums. Hidden behind a thick copse of brambles, it observed the hunters approach. They advanced along a narrow trail with the confidence of those who believed the wild to be tamed by their clever contraptions. Yet the bear, lean and battle-worn from its ordeals, knew that its own survival depended on one final act of ingenuity. With careful deliberation, the bear began to mask its scent by rolling in a patch of damp earth and clinging snow. It then retraced its steps along a meandering route, deliberately forging new tracks that led away from the valley's narrow confines. In doing so, it left behind a confusing array of false trails, muddy impressions interspersed with lightly trodden snow, that made it nearly impossible for any tracker to determine its true course. The hunters, arriving at the valley only to find contradictory signs and dead ends, exchanged frustrated shouts and heated whispers as they debated the bear's elusive direction. Seizing the moment, the bear melted silently back into the dark embrace of the forest, its clever stratagem ensuring yet another escape from the clutches of human pursuit. As winter's grip began to ease, the forest slowly awakened to tentative signs of renewal. Yet the bear's journey continued, its every step a meditation on survival and the art of evasion. It traversed frost-laden clearings, skirted along the edges of thawing streams, and moved like a shadow through ancient groves where the silence was as heavy as the falling snow. The bear's encounters with the hunters had become fewer but no less significant, a quiet reminder that the human threat, though persistent, could be met with equal measures of wit and raw determination. In moments of solitude, when the wind had died to a soft whisper and the forest seemed to exhale in relief, the bear would pause and reflect on the journey thus far. It recalled the ingenious reversal of a trap at an abandoned camp, the swift, desperate dash into a narrow crevice along the riverbank, and the final, nerve-wracking standoff in the valley where its every instinct had been called to battle. These memories, etched into its very being, fueled a quiet confidence. Though its body bore the scars of starvation and conflict, its spirit shone with an inner fire, a defiant light that no trap or hunter could ever extinguish. Each day, as the forest continued its slow dance of renewal, the bear moved further into the wild expanse with both caution and audacity. It learned to navigate by the subtle cues of nature, the changing scent of pine as the wind shifted, the soft murmur of melting snow in hidden hollows, the rhythmic cadence of animal calls in the distance. And with each carefully taken step, it reasserted its place as a creature not only of brute strength but also of cunning intellect, a survivor who had learned to outsmart those who sought to capture or destroy. In the days that followed the tense standoff in the narrow valley, the bear pressed on with a mixture of quiet determination and wary vigilance. The frozen forest, scarred by both nature's relentless winter and the cunning contrivances of human hunters, was beginning to show subtle signs of change. Late winter was slowly loosening its grip, and beneath a sky heavy with low-hanging clouds, the first hints of thaw appeared in the form of soft, slushy patches along the forest floor. The bear's powerful frame, though still lean from months of hunger, moved with a renewed urgency as the promise of spring's bounty mingled with the ever-present need to avoid capture. Every step carried the weight of hard-won lessons. The bear's mind replayed the memory of the abandoned traps and the hunter's frustrated shouts as it navigated through the labyrinth of snow-dusted pines and tangled underbrush. With each cautious pause, it recalled how false trails had been left in its wake, muddied prints and carefully scuffed patches designed to mislead those who might be following. Now, with the ice beginning to soften and the forest slowly awakening, the bear took even greater care to conceal its true path. It moved along meandering routes, sometimes circling back on itself, ensuring that every fresh scent it left behind would be lost in the shifting winds of an environment that was both unpredictable and unforgiving. On one particularly gray morning, the bear found itself approaching the edge of a dense stand of aspen trees. The delicate rustle of the leaves in the soft breeze and the faint, almost musical creak of branches signaled that this was a part of the forest where nature was regaining its gentler rhythm. Here, in the interplay of light and shadow on the slushy ground, the bear sensed an opportunity, a brief respite from the constant menace of human traps. Yet, even as it savored the momentary calm, its keen nostrils detected the distant, acrid scent of burning, a remnant of a hunter's camp perhaps, or the dying embers of a recently abandoned signal fire. Instantly, the bear's senses sharpened. It pressed deeper into the grove, its massive paws treading softly on damp earth and scattered needle beds, as if seeking the cover of the rustling aspens to mask its trail from prying eyes. The bear's journey took it next into an open clearing where the snow had begun to yield to slush, revealing dark, wet patches of ground beneath. In the clearing, the remnants of human presence became even more apparent, discarded bait containers half buried under melting snow, scraps of torn cloth that might once have adorned a trap, and even the faint outline of a hastily abandoned snare, its wires twisted and glinting dully in the weak light. Rather than provoking alarm, these signs spurred the bear to further ingenuity. Its mind worked quickly, recalling the earlier incident when it had used a trap's components to create a false trail, and now it resolved to use the hunter's own carelessness against them once more. With deliberate care, the bear circled the clearing several times. It picked up small clumps of wet earth with its powerful claws and redistributed them along the edges of the snare, effectively masking its natural track with deliberately misleading marks. Each movement was measured and silent, a careful dance of evasion that required all the cunning its starving mind could muster. When the distant sound of human voices, murmurs, and the occasional burst of laughter drifted on the wind, the bear remained hidden beneath a stand of low brush, its dark eyes watching and listening. The hunters, expecting to find easy prey, were instead greeted by confusion when the tracks they uncovered led in contradictory directions. Frustration and uncertainty replaced their confidence, and for a time, the area felt eerily quiet. As the days wore on, the landscape transformed. The sun, now higher in the sky, began to melt the worst of the winter's grip. Streams formed where ice had long reigned, and the bear could detect the scent of running water mingled with the rich odor of damp earth. Driven by both hunger and the instinct to renew its strength, the bear slowly ventured toward one such stream that cut through a forest glen. The water, cool and clear, promised not only a reprieve from dehydration, but also the possibility of fresh prey. The bear waded into the shallow edges, its broad paws sending ripples over pebbles and smooth stones, each step an exercise in balance and caution. Here, among the gentle murmur of a newly born brook, the bear managed to catch a small fish that darted too close, a moment of unexpected success that bolstered its resolve. Yet even as small victories punctuated its relentless quest for survival, the threat of human pursuit remained an ever-present shadow. In the deepening twilight of a brisk autumn evening, as the forest took on hues of copper and gold beneath a sky tinged with the promise of winter, the bear encountered another challenge. While traversing a narrow ridge that overlooked a valley, its ears caught the unmistakable sound of distant voices. The hunters were close, closer than the bear had ever dared to be in recent memory. In that heartbeat of peril, the bear's instincts roared to life. It abandoned the ridge without a backward glance, plunging into the cover of dense thickets and rocky outcrops that jutted from the earth like ancient sentinels. For hours, the bear moved like a phantom through the underbrush. Its body, worn thin by hunger and fatigue, was driven onward by the singular purpose of evading detection. The forest became a maze of scents and sounds, each rustle of leaves, each distant snap of a twig, a potential threat to be deciphered and then outmaneuvered. At one point, the bear paused near a babbling brook, its ears straining to distinguish the natural chorus from the intrusive cadence of human footsteps. With careful, almost imperceptible shifts in direction, it obscured its own trail further, stepping into mud and shallow water to mask the dryness of its prints. In that wet, cool concealment, the bear's heart beat a rapid tattoo of determination, each pulse a defiant echo against the hunter's relentless ambition. When the hunters' voices finally receded into the distance, replaced by the steady hum of the forest's natural symphony, the bear allowed itself a brief moment of relief. It emerged from its concealment and resumed its journey toward a region known only by instinct and the quiet maps etched into its memory. There, beyond the reach of open clearings and easily scouted paths, lay a vast expanse of untouched wilderness, a domain where the bear had once roamed freely and where, perhaps, the hunter's reach was limited by the wild's own chaos. In this new stretch of forest, the bear's days fell into a rhythm dictated by necessity. Mornings began with cautious exploration, its every step calibrated against the uncertainty of the terrain. The scents of wild berries, emerging shoots, and even the faint, musky odor of other animals offered brief sustenance and a promise of renewal. The bear would sometimes pause by a fallen log, its bark soft with moss and damp decay, to lick up a few stray insects or to press its snout against the rich, loamy soil that still remembered the touch of summer. Each small morsel was a testament to the bear's resourcefulness and an affirmation that even in the face of relentless pursuit, life could persist. Yet, as the sun climbed higher and the days stretched longer, the specter of the hunters never fully dissipated from the bear's mind. It continued to practice its art of misdirection, creating false trails, doubling back on its route, and sometimes even pausing to allow a hunter's scent to mingle with that of a decoy left deliberately in the snow. Its clever maneuvers became almost ritualistic, an intricate dance of survival where every gesture carried the weight of a hard-won lesson. In quiet moments of solitude beneath a canopy of birch and pine, the bear's inner thoughts swirled with a deep, almost meditative recognition of its own resilience. It was a creature molded by both nature and adversity, a living embodiment of the wild's enduring spirit. As twilight fell on one such day, the bear found itself atop a gentle rise overlooking a meandering river. The water, now freed from the grip of ice, whispered secrets of distant lands and hidden coves. The bear paused to drink deeply, the cool liquid a balm that briefly stilled the ache of hunger. In that reflective moment, The bear sensed not only the sweetness of survival, but also the bittersweet burden of its journey, a journey that had forced it to outwit not only the hunters who sought to ensnare it, but also the cruel, indifferent elements of nature. Every scar along its body, every careful, deliberate footprint, told a story of endurance, of battles fought in silence against forces both human and natural. With night drawing near and the sky shifting to deep indigo flecked with the first brave stars, the bear moved cautiously into a sheltered copse where the ground was soft and the trees arched overhead in a protective embrace. Here, beneath the gentle murmur of nocturnal life and the distant echo of a wolf's howl, the bear settled into a temporary haven, a place where, for a few precious hours, it could rest without fear of imminent capture. In the quiet, as it closed its eyes, the bear's thoughts were a mingling of gratitude and resolve. It had outsmarted the hunters once more, its clever subterfuge a beacon of hope amid the struggles of starvation and pursuit. In the deep stillness of the night, as the forest exhaled a collective sigh and the bear slept fitfully under a blanket of rustling leaves, the promise of a new day lingered on the horizon. The journey was far from over, and the scars of past encounters served as both a reminder and a rallying cry that even a starving bear, driven to the brink, could find a way to outwit those who wished it harm. The wild, in all its brutal splendor, continued to pulse with life, and within that vast, unpredictable tapestry, the bear's indomitable spirit burned on. As the first light of a crisp winter morning broke over the horizon, the bear left behind the sheltered copse where it had taken refuge. With a body still aching from days of hunger and hardship, it moved silently through a forest now in the early throes of spring's tentative thaw. The ice that had once bound the land was softening at its edges, and the deep prints of its passage were quickly obscured by melting snow and trickling water. Every step was measured, every rustle of undergrowth a reminder of the dangers that lay both in the natural world and in the remnants of human contrivances. Determined to secure its freedom once more, the bear set its course toward a distant ridge that it remembered from earlier days, a place where the canopy opened to reveal a vast expanse of glistening snow and exposed earth. The journey there was fraught with challenges. Along meandering forest trails, it encountered patches of disturbed ground where fresh snares lay half-concealed beneath the fallen leaves. The bear paused, nostrils flaring to detect the metallic tang of wire and the sour odor of stale bait. Instead of succumbing to panic or rushing blindly forward, it circled these hazards with the precision of a seasoned survivor. In some instances, it deliberately stepped in shallow depressions and then retraced its route to muddle its own trail, a subtle art of misdirection meant to confound any would-be pursuers who might follow its scent. The landscape gradually opened into a series of rolling clearings where shafts of light revealed a patchwork of snow, mud, and emerging green shoots. Here, amid the raw beauty of nature's recovery, the bear encountered a new test, a well-worn logging road, long abandoned by man but still faintly marked by tire tracks and broken branches, led to an area where human activity had been unmistakable. In this place, remnants of a recent campfire and scattered cans testified to the presence of hunters. The bear's heart quickened as it advanced slowly, every sense alert to the possibility of fresh traps or lurking hunters. It pressed close to the underbrush, using dense thickets and low-hanging branches as cover while its mind rapidly assessed the risk of each step. At one point, as it neared the edge of the old road, the bear discovered a cleverly concealed snare, different from those it had encountered before. This trap, rigged with a heavier coil of wire and set in a depression that had collected a thin layer of mud, seemed designed to capture a larger animal. The bear crouched low, studying the contraption with an intensity born of hunger and survival instinct. It realized that while the trap might have been meant for it, the bear had already learned the hunter's tricks. With deliberate care, it circled the device, letting a few droplets of water from a nearby melting icicle fall upon the wire. The moisture caused the metal to cool and contract ever so slightly, and in a series of precise, almost imperceptible movements, the bear nudged a loose section of the rigging with its powerful paw. The trap shuddered and, in that moment of distraction, The bear slipped silently away, leaving behind a device that would likely confuse and delay any hunter who discovered it later. Emboldened by this small victory, the bear continued its journey along the ancient road. The forest grew quieter as it advanced into an area where the trees stood more sparsely and the ground was marked by the scars of both natural erosion and human passage. Here, the bear's hunger spurred it to search for any scrap of food it could salvage. It nosed through a clearing scattered with discarded remnants, a half-buried crate, a rusted tin, and a frayed length of rope. While these artifacts held little nutritional value, they served as stark reminders that humans had once trodden these paths with the intent to capture or kill. Instead of fleeing in terror, the bear absorbed these signs with a measured calm, storing the lessons in its memory as it moved on. The day wore on, and as the sun began its slow descent, the bear found itself nearing a broad, frozen river whose surface reflected the subdued light like a vast mirror. The water, still hidden beneath a brittle crust of ice, whispered of distant seals and the bounty of open leads, though its stomach still grumbled with the remnant hunger of lean days. The bear's mind was focused on survival and on avoiding any trace of human interference. With cautious steps, it crossed the river along a narrow, treacherous patch where cracks in the ice formed a precarious pathway. Each step was a calculated risk, as the bear tested the strength of the ice with a claw or a tentative paw before committing its full weight. The river's soft gurgle and the crunch of its heavy paw prints on the frosty bank became its guide in this uncertain crossing. Once safely on the far side, the bear paused at the riverbank, its breath forming small clouds in the cooling air. For a few precious moments, it allowed itself the luxury of reflection, a silent meditation on the harshness of its existence and the small triumphs that had kept it alive. The forest here was denser, and the faint murmur of human voices seemed to be just a memory carried on the wind. Yet the threat was never entirely gone. The bear knew that its cleverness had earned it a temporary reprieve, but the hunters would always be a persistent shadow in this wilderness. As twilight deepened into a starless, ink-black night, the bear sought one last safe haven before settling in for rest. It moved into a copse of ancient pines whose gnarled branches intertwined overhead, forming a natural roof against the chill. Here, amid the quiet rustle of needles and the distant call of a nocturnal bird, the bear curled up on a bed of soft moss and dried leaves. Its massive form, marked by scars and lean muscle, relaxed into the embrace of the forest, a brief interlude of peace in a life defined by constant vigilance. In that silent, dark sanctuary, the bear's thoughts drifted between memories of past hardships and the promise of a new dawn. Every near miss with a trap, every cleverly engineered escape, had forged within it an unyielding resolve. It knew that with each passing day, its hunger might wane if it continued to outsmart those who sought to capture it, that, with persistence and ingenuity, it could secure enough sustenance to rebuild its strength and reclaim a measure of freedom. The soft murmur of the wind through the pines and the steady cadence of its own breathing became a lullaby, a testament to the wild's timeless dance of survival and cunning. As sleep finally overtook the bear, it did so with the quiet certainty that tomorrow would bring fresh challenges and new opportunities. The forest, ever mutable and indifferent, would test its mettle again. But the starving bear had learned that intellect and instinct could be as powerful as brute force. In the face of human traps and the relentless hunger that had driven it to the edge of collapse, it had not only survived but had outwitted its foes time and again. And so, in that sheltered haven beneath the ancient trees, the bear dreamed of a future where each day was won not merely by strength, but by the keen, resilient mind that had carried it through the wilderness. As the first light of a new day crept over the frost-covered horizon, the bear slowly awoke from its fitful rest. Its heavy eyelids lifted to a world transformed, a forest now bathed in a pale, hopeful glow after days of relentless pursuit and peril. Stretching its weary limbs, the bear recalled the hard-won lessons of evasion and ingenuity. The echoes of human footsteps and the distant murmurs of hunters had faded into a quiet memory as it rose, its powerful paws leaving fresh imprints on the soft, damp earth. With cautious determination, the bear began its journey toward a region whispered about in the secret maps etched into its memory, a part of the wilderness where nature still ruled unchecked and food abounded. The terrain shifted beneath its massive frame. Vast fields of open ice gave way to meandering river channels whose gentle ripples provided both a guide and a promise of life. Every step was measured and deliberate, for the bear knew that the treacherous paths it now traversed could conceal both the beauty of renewal and the hidden snares of human malice. After hours of steady progress, the bear entered a dense coniferous forest, where towering ancient pines formed a protective barrier overhead. Here, the forest floor was alive with the promise of spring, a bounty of wild berries, tender shoots, and the soft hum of insects awakening from winter's slumber. Hunger and hope intermingled as the bear feasted on the natural gifts of the land, each bite renewing its strength and fortifying its resolve. In these moments of respite, the bear allowed itself to savor the simple, honest pleasures of life in the wild: a taste of ripe berry, the cool splash of a clear stream, the delicate scent of moss and pine needles. Yet the memory of danger still lurked in every shadow. As the bear ventured deeper into the forest, a faint, acrid scent, a telltale trace of human presence, drifted on the wind. Instantly, its senses honed in on the threat. Hidden in the dappled light of a secluded glade, the bear lowered its enormous frame behind a thicket, its ears straining to catch every whisper of sound. Soon, the muted cadence of hurried footsteps and indistinct voices reached it, signaling a small group of hunters moving with cautious determination. The bear's heart pounded as it recalled past encounters with traps and the desperate ruse that had once left the hunters chasing false trails. Relying on instinct sharpened by months of hardship, the bear began to retrace its own carefully devised route. It moved with quiet grace through the forest's maze, deliberately altering its tracks by stepping into muddy depressions and backtracking across freshly trodden snow. Every calculated movement served to confuse any potential pursuers. In a final act of clever misdirection, the bear intentionally disturbed a cluster of branches near a known trap site, sending a flurry of broken twigs and disturbed snow in one direction, while its true path vanished into the thick, embracing shadows of the woods. As the hunters' voices gradually receded into the distance, replaced by the gentle chorus of birds and the rustle of leaves, the bear emerged from its concealment. Its hunger, tempered now by recent foraging successes, was joined by a cautious optimism, guided by the scent of fresh water and the sweet aroma of emerging wildflowers. It pressed onward into a secluded haven far from the dangerous fringes of human encroachment. In a quiet, unspoiled clearing deep within the forest, where sunlight filtered through an interlacing canopy of birch and pine, the bear discovered a true sanctuary. Here, nature's bounty was plentiful, a carpet of wild greens, clusters of berries hidden among dew-laden foliage, and the gentle murmur of a nearby stream offering life-sustaining water. The bear settled into this refuge with deliberate care, feasting to rebuild its depleted strength and resting in the cool shade of ancient trees that had witnessed the cycles of countless seasons. In these solitary moments of quiet reflection, the bear's thoughts turned inward. Every scar on its weathered hide and every careful, cunning maneuver along its long journey told a story of relentless survival, a testament to the indomitable spirit that had allowed it to outwit those who sought to capture or end its life. The bear had transformed itself from a desperate, starving animal into a master of evasion, using the very traps set by humans against them through artful misdirection and strategic retreat. As dusk fell and the forest grew serene under a sky painted in muted hues of lavender and deep blue, the bear rose once more with a sense of renewed purpose. It knew that challenges would continue to arise in this vast, untamed wilderness, and that the hunters might one day return. Yet, in that moment, the bear's resilient heart beat in quiet triumph, a living emblem of nature's unyielding will to survive. With cautious steps, the bear moved forward into the night, its silhouette merging with the ancient trees. The promise of safety and abundance lay ahead in this secluded haven, where every day was a testament to the cunning, strength, and enduring spirit that had carried it through the darkest hours. And so, under the silent watch of 1,000 unseen stars, the bear continued its journey, ever vigilant, ever resilient, and forever a master of its own destiny.